Anisi tells you, you are no longer kitten. You have learned to keep secrets from Anisi. Anisi tells you story about Lorkhan, about the gods and creation. In the beginning there were two littermates, Anur and Fadome. After many phases, Fadome said to Anur, "Let us wed and make children to share our happiness." And they gave birth to Alkosh, the first cat, Kenarthi, the winds, Magrus, the cat's eye, Mara, the mother cat, and Srendar, the runt. Many phases passed and Anur and Fadome were happy. And Anur said, "We should have more children to share our happiness." And Fadome agreed. And she gave birth to Hermora, and she gave birth to Hirsain, and she gave birth to Meruns and Mafala, and Sangin and Shegorath and many others. And Anur said, 2 liters is enough, for too many children will steal our happiness. But Kenarthi went to Fadome and said, "Fadome mother, Kenarthi grows lonely so high above the world, where not even my brother Alkosh can fly." Fadome took pity on her and tricked Anur to make her pregnant again. And Fadome gave birth to the moons and their motions, and she gave birth to Nirni and the majestic sands and lush forests, and she gave birth to Asura, the dusk and the dawn. But Anur caught Fadome while she was still birthing, and he was angry. Anur struck Fadome, and she fled to birth the last of her litter, far away in the great darkness. Fadome's children heard what had happened, and they all came to be with her and protect her from Anur's anger. Fadome gave birth to Lorkhan, the last of the litter, in the great darkness, and the heart of Lorkhan was filled with the great darkness. Lorkhan, the missing god, the trickster god, the one who appears in the history of every single race in this world, the entity given the value of having created the world. He was born in the great darkness, born directly in conflict. Anu was angry. The creation of the moons, of Asura and of Lorkhan threatened the stability of static that Anu represented. And because of that, he wanted them destroyed. For as long as any Daedra or Daedra can remember, Anu and Padome had been at war. Anu and the world of creation had been at war. When Lorkhan was being created in the Great Darkness, every children of Padome protected her against Anu. They did this because everyone loved Padome. Unfortunately, the attack on Padome by Anu and all the births that she had done were killing her. Her divine spark was used up for all the creations and now she was dying. Before she died, however, she gave gifts to those she loved the most. She gave the Edada known as Nirn the ability to produce children, and she gave Asura her 3 great secrets, and then Padome died. Nirn wanted to create her own children, but couldn't. She needed a place for them to exist. She asked Lorkhan for help, and help he did. However, there was darkness in his heart. The darkness compelled him to trick his fellow gods into being stuck in this new creation, compelled him to use them for their divine spark to stabilize the world. Many gods died, their divine spark used to the last drop, and many others escaped, becoming the stars. Those that stayed and survived punished Lorkhan, tore his heart of darkness out but couldn't destroy it. The heart could speak. The heart was also a creation of Padome. It had a name, and its name was Namira. The creation couldn't be destroyed, but the physical heart could be hid. Now Lorkhan, freed from the darkness, was punished to see with his own eyes the creation that he had made, to wallow in despair forever at the death and misery that he had procured. Asura, knowing the 3 secrets of Padome, used them as gifts to the newly arrived children. The secrets were tied to the moons, as they were the defense mechanism to protect everything against Anu, the one who wished to destroy everything. Padome knew that Anu wouldn't stop until all was consumed, so before she died, she gifted the moons with the lattice. The lunar lattice prevented the entrance of Anu into this existence and kept all safe. The first secret given to Asura was the ability to open this shield, an opening that would allow passage through to the realm of Anu. See, Asura was given a quest by Padome. She was to pick one of the races of Nirn to make them perfect, to make them the protectors of this existence. They were to use the powers of the moon to fight against Anu and his warriors, and to put the moons back in order lest their power fail. This was the second secret, the ability to use the powers of the moon and change like the seasons. This secret was given to the chosen race by Asura. The chosen race were the Khajiit. And since then, the Khajiit are molded, changed, and formed by the shapes and motions of the moon. However, when Asura opened the shield to get to Nirn, Ifri, the god of Bosmer, overheard the secret, and he shouted it. Ifri shouted the secret so that every single entity would be affected by the magic words. Asura managed to shield 2 individuals from the magics in her wisdom. Asura protected both Anu and Lorkhan from being affected by this magic. And since then, every living person in this world has had the ability to move to the realm of Anu when they die, except Lorkhan. Cursed to wander the world forever, not being able to leave, walking wherever he goes. So let's talk about the theory that Mike the Liar is actually Lorkhan. But before that, I guess let's start first with who is Mike the Liar. Mike the Liar is an NPC character that has appeared in Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and Elder Scrolls Online. However, his appearance is more of an Easter egg than anything else. This is attributed by the fact that his in-game knowledge appears to be out of character oriented, having meta-knowledge of the games. He will make comments about the world that have a second meaning that can be recognized as references to the previous Elder Scroll titles. He does this though by keeping in character, like he never actually says anything out of character. The fact that he appears in all the games poses a weird problem since the games are very far apart in terms of timelines, which means Mike the Liar would have to be thousands of years old for him to be actually alive during all these games. He, however, has made references to his father also being called Maig, and his father's father also being called Maig, suggesting that the reason he appears in all the games is because every single Maig we see is actually a different Maig. They always just have one child, and that child is always given the same name. This theory was never satisfactory because the Maigs were shockingly similar between themselves. They sometimes said the same things in between games, and the amount of knowledge they had was always out of the ordinary. Plus, it never explained the meta aspect of the character. You might think, hey, wait a minute, you can't really ever explain the meta aspect of Maig through in-game lore. Well, actually, yeah, I can, and I'll get to that in a minute. The point is, Maig was always an enigma. And the fact that the developers called him an Easter egg made people stop wondering about him, about his past, and about his powers. But not today. Today we're going to talk about my theory and why I believe it so. The one caveat though before we proceed is the one belief that I'm going to ask you to suspend. A belief that is quite difficult, I think. That being that Mike the Liar is only an Easter egg. If Mike was made to be an Easter egg and only to be an Easter egg, then of course any theory on what he actually is falls through. So we're going to be basing this video on the concept that Mike is a real character within the game and within the lore of the world. So then the question becomes, well, how is this possible? How can this character exist and be the way it is? Well, let's begin. Lorkhan is known as the missing god, not as the dead god. Most creation myths say that his heart was removed, but not necessarily that Lorkhan was destroyed. Of course, you can infer that an entity dies when their heart is removed, except that, well, he's a god. But more importantly, the Khajiit creation myth very explicitly says that the heart of Lorkhan is an entity by itself. They mention that the heart is one thing and that Lorkhan is another. In fact, they say that the darkness inside of him and became his heart was Namira. There are many interpretations of this, and we know that there was an actual physical heart, but the fact of the matter is that we know for a fact that Lorkhan is tied to this world, and that one cannot be destroyed without destroying the other. Many creation myths touch on the curse of Lorkhan, saying that he is cursed to, and I quote, walk Nirn for many faces. That's from the Khajiit creation myth. But here's the Yokudan version, I quote, while the rest of the world was allowed to stride back to godhood, Sep could only slink around in a dead skin, or swim about in the sky, a hungry void that jealously tried to eat the stars. Sep in this case is Lorkhan. Or here's another one, I quote, after the world is materialized, Lorkhan is separated from his divine center, sometimes involuntarily, and wonders the creation of the Edada. That's from the Monomyth, which is basically a book in Skyrim about the gods and the creation myths. There are many sources that claim that he wanders the world in one way or another. Not dead, maybe crippled, but definitely alive. So then the question becomes, well, where is he? We know that he is cursed to wander the world, yet we have never seen him. Or have we? It's interesting that Asura and Padome, according to the Khajiit creation myth, say that the way to fight Anu is to be one with the moons, in this case, to change. They talk about the moons always changing and always running and always moving. We know that Lorkhan fights against Anu, so the way he would fight against Anu would be by always moving and always changing. We know that he has taken different shapes throughout history based on creation myths, as in he is sometimes seen as a snake, sometimes as a Nord, and I argue this time as a Khajiit. He must always be changing because that is his defense mechanism against Anu and his children, or more specifically, someone like Auriel who seeks to kill him. My first evidence is simply the fact that Lorkhan is supposed to be wandering the world, changing and camouflaging, an immortal figure that can never leave. And we happen to have a character that fits the bill perfectly, a character that wanders the world seemingly immortal, that walks everywhere without reason, disappears whenever he wants without a trace, and is extremely knowledgeable. The Psijic Endeavor is a method in which one can transcend mortal boundaries set in place by mortal rulers. The goal of the Endeavor is to achieve the state known as CHIM, which is believed to be the last step. The state of CHIM is a state in which one can break free from all known laws and corruptions. It allows for the user to return to a state before the mingling of Anu and Padome and manipulate reality how they please. CHIM is visualized as a crowned tower that threatens to break apart at the slightest break in concentration. You can only achieve CHIM by viewing this tower. Now, the tower is said to represent what encompasses the universe, and part of the endeavor is to visualize yourself inside of it. A person that manages all of this and reaches this step is able to manipulate the tower without fear. You can experience time and bend it forward and inward. Now, the whole point of achieving CHIM is that you obtain knowledge of the universe from a third-person perspective, like an observer looking in and seeing it all. Having knowledge of everything, including the past and the future, would give you knowledge that would look like meta-knowledge. Though more interestingly, achieving CHIM could give you the knowledge that would literally be meta-knowledge. The same type of knowledge that a person playing the game of Elder Scrolls might have. Now, I'm not saying that MrRhexx would have the ability to understand that this is all a game. I am saying that if there are changes to the world at the programming level, any interesting differences between the games, theoretically MrRhexx would be able to understand and notice those changes as part of CHIM. Now, I understand that does sound a little far-fetched, though even if his powers wouldn't go that far, CHIM would explain how he has the ability to see and understand things from a different perspective than literally everyone else in the world, to the point where he would look like he had a god style of omnipotence. In essence, CHIM allows one the powers of seeing the world in third person and understand it as such, which is literally what MrRhexx seems to do. Now, this is connected to Lorkhan because he was the literal creator of CHIM. Many creation myths differ as far as why Lorkhan did what he did, but one thing they all have in common is that he actually did it. Lorkhan did create the world, and if you were wondering how he did it, well, it was through CHIM. The creation of the planet we know as Nirn was achieved by Lorkhan using CHIM, what is believed to have been the very first usage of this power. It is also believed that Lorkhan added so many limitations to the world because with those limitations it was the only way gods and mortals could surpass them and reach perfection. The argument was that the original spirits, because they were immeasurable and infinite, they couldn't ponder their limits and they couldn't pinpoint their own individuality from the orbis. This meant that they couldn't find true happiness, the type of happiness that only comes when one escapes or exceeds their limitations. For this reason, Lorkhan began to formulate the mortal plane as a way in which true transcendence could be achieved, as only a mortal could surpass all their boundaries, laws, and corruptions. Mundus itself was designed to be a reflection of the Orbis, and by association, the Tower. This is why CHIM is usually attached to Lorkhan. Now you might argue that anyone would have the ability to achieve CHIM, that just because MrRhexx seems to have achieved it doesn't make it Lorkhan. That's true, but think of the fact that the only known individual who has achieved it is Vivek. That's it, man. Only one mortal individual has been known to have achieved it, and the only reason he managed was because Molag Bal showed him how. So no, I don't think that just anyone can learn it. It sounds like it is possible, but unlikely that MrRhexx was just some random Khajiit who happened to have learned it. Now the main point to take from all of this is that Lorkhan would be the guy that would take on a mortal shape. Out of any god, he would be the one who would walk the land looking, feeling, and being a mortal. Because that's the point. Only by being a mortal, only by having limitations, could one break those limitations and find true happiness. And that's what he does. The whole reason he made this material plane the way it is to teach others how to reach those enhanced states. My second evidence is basically that MrRhexx shows the telltale signs of having achieved CHIM, something that only one other has achieved, which makes it extremely rare. CHIM is extremely tied to Lorkhan. If Lorkhan wanted to teach mortals how to access this knowledge, he would take on the form of one and speak of this knowledge to those he would meet. Out of any mortal shape he could take, and has, the Khajiit shape makes the most sense, since it is the Khajiit who were destined to fight Anu, Lorkhan's greatest rival. I would also like to point out that for the most part, all the gods hate Lorkhan for what he did. There is, however, only one that has forgiven him: Nirn, what became the planet. Nirn, as a god, has the ability to morph and shape the shape of those that live within it. She was forever grateful to Lorkhan for having created this existence, a place for her children to grow and live. Nirn would have the ability to change Lorkhan into any shape he would want. She would also protect him from all the angry gods and Daedras if he would request. This one is kind of a short one, but I couldn't help not putting it in this video. Listen to this quote. "We curse you, noisy Lorkha, to walk Nirni for many faces." I honestly can try, but it's hard not to picture Mike the Liar when reading that out loud. Both known and famous for being talkative liars. This last piece of evidence is mostly just food for thought. Nirni came to Lorkha and said, "Lorkha, Father told me to give birth to many children, but there is no place for them." And Lorkha said, "Lorkha makes a place for children, and Lorkha puts you there so you can give birth." But the heart of Lorkha was filled with the great darkness, and Lorkha tricked siblings so that they were forced into this new place with Nirni. And many of Father's children escaped and became the stars, and many of Father's children died to make the path to Nirni stable, and the survivors stayed and punished Lorkha. The children of Father tore out the heart of Lorkha and hid it deep within Nirni, and they said, "We curse you, noisy Lorkha, to walk Nirni for many faces." But Nirni soon forgave Lorkha, for Nirni could make children, and she filled herself with children. I hope you enjoyed this new episode of Skyrim Conspiracy Theories. If you did, please consider going over to patreon.com/MrRhexx and become a supporter of this channel. I would like to thank Alex Fitchie, Toby Oliver, and Dylan Baker for their support at the $25 level. Your generosity is legendary and I will not let you forget it. Also, remember to click on the bell directly below the video by the subscription icon, so that you can be notified whenever my videos go live. A lot of you tell me that my videos are not showing on your subscription boxes, so hopefully that fixes it. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this theory, and if you have any theories of your own. Have a great week, and see you all on the next one.